And no, despite the insistence of YouTube slop, Fever coach Stephanie White is not a sleeper agent for the WNBA's old guard activated to cage Clark's most exciting qualities. White is, however, a ball knower who had a front row seat to Clark's Iowa wizardry as a broadcaster and realizes that sometimes the best way to get her the ball at the end of the possession is to have her give it up in the beginning. Now,
a WNBA analyst just went on national television and took a direct shot at Caitlin Clark, while at the exact same time a major sports publication launched an attack on independent basketball creators by dismissing them as YouTube slop. But the entire narrative immediately started falling apart once the actual numbers came into the conversation. They tried to defend Stephanie White by tearing down the biggest star in women's basketball. Instead, they accidentally exposed the truth about this coaching philosophy, one built on contradictions, excuses, and non-stop media spin. Now, the very label they use as an insult has become a badge of honor because, unlike the mainstream media, independent creators are bringing receipts. Today, we're dismantling the lazy ESPN talking points, exposing the exact synergy stats analysts hope fans would never check, and revealing the massive contradiction that proves the WNBA establishment is completely disconnected from what people are actually watching on the court. This is no longer just commentary. This is a full-scale rebellion.
Caitlin Clark at Iowa, and think to yourself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the exact opposite of that. If I'm going to take Caitlin Clark off ball, you know what I'm going to do with her while she's off ball? Nothing. I'm going to do nothing with her. I'm not going to implement an offensive system so when she does play off ball.
For the past 3 weeks, independent creators and hardcore basketball fans have been sounding the alarm about the off-ball disaster unfolding in Indiana. Everyone watching the games can see it clearly. The moment Caitlin Clark gives up the basketball in Stephanie White's system, she gets pushed into the corner and told to stand completely still like an expensive decoy instead of the centerpiece of the offense. As criticism started growing louder, the WNBA media establishment appeared to panic because fans were beginning to question one of their favorite coaches. So what happened next? The Access journalists went into full defense mode. An article from The Ringer attempted to shut down the criticism and even mocked independent creators by labeling channels like this one YouTube slop. But out here in the so-called slop, nobody cares about media access or protecting narratives. People care about the actual game of basketball. And the funniest part of this entire situation is that the very article meant to defend Stephanie White may have accidentally exposed the problem even more, because the data they used ended up proving the exact criticism fans have been making all along.
In Iowa, in this piece, and the difference is pretty stark. Clark play type percentage per synergy. You have Iowa's 23-24, the years most of us fell in love with her, compared to Fever 25, Stephanie White's year. Look at all these stark differences. Pick and roll ball handler, less in Iowa, but more with the Fever. Isolation, less in Iowa.
Look at the synergy data graphic that was provided directly by The Ringer. The comparison showed Caitlin Clark's offensive workload under head coach Lisa Blutter at Iowa versus her role under Stephanie White in Indiana. The article's main argument was basically, Caitlin played off the ball at Iowa too, so fans should stop complaining. But once you actually read the numbers they published, the entire argument starts to collapse. Under Lisa Blutter at Iowa, Caitlin Clark had far more cuts to the basket, more catch-and-shoot opportunities, and significantly more action coming off-ball screens. Under Stephanie White, nearly all of those movement metrics dropped dramatically, and that is the real story the data exposed. At Iowa, the offense constantly worked to free Caitlin Clark and get the ball back into the hands of one of the greatest shooters in basketball. They ran pin-down screens, elevator actions, backdoor cuts, and non-stop movement to keep defenses under pressure. But in Indiana, when Clark gives up the ball, the offense often stalls completely. Instead of movement and screen actions, she is left standing still with minimal involvement in the play. Ironically, the same mainstream media article that was supposed to defend Stephanie White may have ended up providing the strongest evidence yet that the off-ball system simply is not functioning the way fans expected. And the deeper you look into the media reaction, the more the contradictions start piling up, especially when you get to ESPN.
Talks about the pressure in coaching someone like Caitlin Clark and the scrutiny that comes along with it.
Curious about what the pressure is like for you coaching her, because every single thing she does is so hyper scrutinized. You know, you had her for 13 games last year. You're looking at this as we start the season right now, but what's it like for you coaching a kid like this that everyone's watching?
LaChina Robinson looked directly into the camera during a national ESPN broadcast and claimed that the Indiana Fever played their best basketball last season without Caitlin Clark on the floor. The argument was that the ball spends too much time in Clark's hands, making the offense easy to defend, while the team supposedly showed more variety and balance whenever Clark was sidelined. The take was clearly aimed at pushing back against fans who have been criticizing the Fever's offensive system and off-ball strategy. But once the actual numbers are examined, the entire narrative starts falling apart. Last season, the Fever posted a 61.5% winning percentage with Caitlin Clark in the lineup, compared to just 51.6% without her, a massive 10-point difference that completely contradicts the idea that the team performed better without its franchise player. The advanced metrics paint the exact same picture. With Clark on the court, Indiana operated with a plus 6.4 net rating, and their offensive rating ranked among the very best in the league. Without her, the Fever dropped back to being an average team offensively. There is simply no objective statistical argument that supports the claim that Indiana was better without Caitlin Clark, which raises the obvious question. If the numbers tell one story so clearly, how did ESPN arrive at the exact opposite conclusion?
The Bluter system and a Steve Kerr system, since everybody wants to bring up Steph Curry, they have Steph Curry moving around. They don't have Steph Curry passing the ball up and standing still. They don't have Steph Curry decoy screening and plopping his ass in the corner. They have him moving. But let me get this right, because they're going to get into it. Steph Curry needs to play.
The most shocking part of the entire debate is that the hot takes coming from ESPN may have accidentally revealed exactly what Stephanie White's philosophy actually is behind closed doors. The argument presented on television was that the offense becomes easier to guard when Caitlin Clark controls the ball too much, and that the team looks more diverse when multiple players are handling responsibilities. But when you compare those comments to Stephanie White's own recent statements, the similarities become impossible to ignore. White has repeatedly talked about wanting more versatility by playing Clark off the ball, and even roster decisions seem designed around reducing Caitlin's role as the primary initiator. In other words, the media is not just offending White. They are openly repeating and promoting the exact philosophy she appears to believe in. The problem is that this philosophy asks fans to believe that taking the ball away from one of the most efficient playmakers basketball has ever seen somehow makes the team more dangerous offensively. Then comes a comparison to Stephen Curry, which only makes the contradiction even more obvious. The argument from the Ringer suggested Caitlin Clark should play more like Curry instead of operating in a heliocentric system similar to Trae Young. But that comparison completely ignores what actually makes Curry so effective. When Curry gives up the basketball, he does not stand motionless in the corner, waiting for the play to end. He becomes relentless off the ball, sprinting through screens, constantly relocating, exhausting defenses with nonstop movement, and forcing defenders into chaos. If Indiana were truly running a Steph Curry-style system for Caitlin Clark, fans would probably celebrate it. But that is not what many people believe they are seeing. Instead, critics argue that Clark too often becomes a stationary decoy rather than an active weapon within the offense. And as the games continue, more fans are starting to believe the pattern is becoming impossible to ignore.
She's moving like Doc Rivers with these interview appearances. Ooh, Doc Rivers, that's a pretty good competition. It's a pretty good competition. Doc Rivers needed Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce for people to actually say, oh yeah, that's a championship coach. Before then, a loser. Like, you know who. It's very interesting what's going on over here. I'm surprised.
ESPN has faced constant criticism from fans over the way it has evaluated Caitlin Clark throughout her rise in basketball. Before her rookie season, she was left off major player rankings entirely, then placed surprisingly low in mid-season evaluations, and later ranked outside the very top tier again heading into the 2026 season. At the same time, networks continue using Clark's image and popularity to drive WNBA coverage, build engagement, and attract viewers, which is why many fans see a contradiction when analysts go on national television and argue that the Indiana Fever somehow function better without her. Critics of the media narrative believe you cannot market a player as the face of the league while also minimizing her impact whenever basketball discussions become serious. Much of the frustration has also shifted towards Stephanie White and the offensive philosophy surrounding the Fever. White often presents herself as a high-level basketball strategist, but critics argue that the results and advanced metrics have not fully supported the reputation. Even league executives reportedly gave her little recognition in coaching surveys, adding even more fuel to the debate. Meanwhile, many fans feel the media spends more time attacking independent creators and online commentators than honestly addressing the on-court concerns people keep raising. Supporters of Clark point to the numbers, the advanced metrics, MVP conversations, and the eye test is evidence that the most dangerous version of Indiana's offense is still the one with Caitlin Clark heavily involved as the primary playmaker. That is why upcoming matchups, especially high-profile games like Indiana Fever versus Dallas Wings, featuring Caitlin Clark and Paige Buchers, are being viewed by fans as more than just regular season games. For many people watching, it feels like a direct test between the media narratives, the coaching philosophy, and the reality shown by the numbers on the court.